Sitting in the doctor's office, I had this gut feeling that something was wrong. The doctor walked in, sat down on the bed beside me, and said, "I'm sorry. You have cancer." 3 words that I never saw coming. But looking back, my symptoms of cancer were obvious, but I completely missed them. I do not want you to make the same mistake. Watching this video could save your life. Let me help. The symptoms were right in front of me. I felt them. I noticed them. I even talked about them, but I absolutely did not recognize them to be cancer. Now, as a cancer researcher myself, I'm embarrassed I didn't pick up on this sooner. Learn from my mistakes. I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer is known to be the silent killer, and now I completely understand why. And what's wild is that I didn't have any of the classic symptoms of ovarian cancer. The symptoms that everyone warns you about. Painful sex, constipation, feeling really full. It wasn't a lump, it wasn't a sharp pain, it wasn't anything that I thought was serious. I had 3 symptoms of ovarian cancer, and the last one was the final push that got me to go to my doctor. But starting with number 1, anxiety. After working with over 500 women in the Cancer Freedom Program, I've noticed that this is a common theme. A common symptom of cancer among a variety of diagnoses is anxiety. The feeling of stress, anxiety, or impending doom. That's exactly how I felt. My intuition was telling me, was screaming at me that something was wrong. Now, look, it's tough to say that just because you have anxiety, you have cancer. I mean, a lot of people have anxiety. It's relatively common. But here's the catch. If you've never had anxiety before, and all of a sudden you have anxiety, or if all of a sudden it's getting worse and worse, it's time to take a look as to what is going on. Okay, but the next symptom I had was quite subtle. Bloating. I had mild bloating. It would come and go. Nothing serious, really. But to be honest, I had bloating most of my life. It would come and go. I would eat something salty, or if I was getting close to my menstrual period, I would be bloated. I think most women would say that. So it's hard to identify this as a sign of cancer. During my doctorate degree, there were times where I was incredibly bloated and very uncomfortable. But the bloating would always go away. Eventually, the next day, it would be better. I even recall being at the hospital one afternoon and saying to a coworker, "Oh, I feel so bloated. Look at my stomach." She brushed me off and said, "Oh, come on, you're in great shape." Lots of women have bloating. It's just really nothing to be concerned about. All of these things seemed explainable, normal even, and that's what made them so easy to ignore. In hindsight, I can see the signs so clearly. But when you're in the middle of your life, working and taking care of your family and managing your stress, you can easily miss these symptoms. That is exactly why I'm sharing this with you, because cancer doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a whisper, and you have to be in tune. Otherwise, you'll miss it. Unfortunately for ovarian cancer survivors, there's absolutely no screening tool. There's no blood test or scan that can quickly and efficiently detect ovarian cancer. You simply have to go based off of your symptoms. Now, some people will say, well, we do have the CA-125 blood test. That's a way to detect ovarian cancer. But this test is incredibly unreliable, and it can be elevated for a number of reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with ovarian cancer. It's just not a reliable way to screen women. So we know this, and we know it needs to be better. Now, persistent bloating is one of the most common symptoms of ovarian cancer. So here's the difference. The bloating I was experiencing would come and go. It wasn't constant. It wasn't tied to my cycle. It felt totally random. But this bloating never went away. It would always come back. Plus, we weren't just talking about days here. The bloating issues that I had, they happened over weeks and months. Okay, but this last obvious symptom of cancer is what finally pushed me to go to the doctor. Heartburn. I had heartburn all the time. It didn't matter what I ate. I constantly had heartburn. I was so young. I had never had heartburn before, but here I was like keeping Tums in the drawer of my desk. I was constantly needing something to get rid of this symptom. Now, this one really fooled me. Sometimes it was mild. Sometimes it would keep me up at night, but it was just heartburn, not severe enough to really raise a red flag. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people in the world that have heartburn. But here was the difference for me. I had never had heartburn before. This was totally and completely new. Plus, it was all the time. constant. But regardless, I chalked it up to stress or spicy foods. Antacids helped a little, but not completely. But here is why I was having heartburn. The tumor on my ovary was pressing up on my digestive tract with the extra pressure I was having in digestion and heartburn. So again, I treated the symptom, but not the cause. And that delayed everything. It was finally heartburn that pushed me to go to my doctor. I figured that I needed something more than just over-the-counter antacids to help correct this. Maybe a prescription. Maybe I had an ulcer. So I went to the doctor. To her credit, she wanted to run a few tests, but everything was normal. First, a pregnancy test to make sure the bloating and the heartburn wasn't related to a new pregnancy. Now, obviously, those can be symptoms of pregnancy. Easy enough, that came back negative. Then she tested me for H. pylori. When that came back negative, she sent me for an ultrasound of my abdomen. In women, there are a lot of things that can potentially happen with your ovaries. Cysts, for example. So we did an ultrasound to see if there was an issue. And that ultrasound found a mass on my ovary. And this was the beginning of my cancer diagnosis. I had an abdominal ultrasound, then a CT scan, which confirmed the high likelihood of ovarian cancer. But of course, cancer can never be truly diagnosed until it's actually put under a microscope. So it was during my surgery when I was officially diagnosed with ovarian cancer, although we were mostly certain it was cancer the entire time. So why do we miss symptoms like these? Because they're common, and especially for women, we normalize them. That's the problem. We're used to feeling uncomfortable. We're told that bloating is part of the menstrual cycle, or it's part of menopause, that anxiety is just part of being a mom or a partner or the stress of work, that heartburn just comes along with aging. We minimize, we rationalize, and we push through. But here's the truth. Just because something's common does not make it normal. And your body deserves attention. Not just when it's screaming, but when it's actually whispering for help. I wish I had listened sooner. So if you're having symptoms that are suspicious or unusual, do this next. First, track your symptoms. Write them down. Patterns matter. What seems like nothing on its own will seem like something when it's all fit together. This also allows you to give doctors, even the dismissive ones, a clear time frame, frequencies, and dates. It's hard to argue with data. Next is to research, but not too much. The University of Google will have you convinced you're dying within the next week. Be knowledgeable, but do not over-research. Instead, find 1 to 2 professionals that you really trust. Then go with them for advice and support. Next is to speak up. If something feels off, say it. Even if you're not sure, even if it feels small, you are allowed to advocate for your own body. There's literally no one in the world that's going to care about you and your health as much as you do. You owe it to yourself to speak up. Next is get a second opinion. If a healthcare provider brushes off your symptoms and you still don't feel right, you need to find someone who will listen. I do not care if your doctor is offended or hurt. This is your health and your life that we're talking about. The good doctors will not be offended if you ask for a second opinion. They will encourage you to do that. Now look, I've been sharing my story of being diagnosed with cancer since 2016. That's a long time. Since then, I've had a few people who have accused me of trying to spark fear into people. So everyone that has heartburn will also have cancer? Absolutely not. But this is my personal experience, and I think you can still take a lot away from this story. I do not share this to create fear. I share it to create awareness because early detection can make a huge difference, especially among ovarian cancer survivors. Okay, but now that you know these obvious symptoms of cancer that I personally overlooked, the next thing that you need to know is how I beat stage 3 cancer in just 90 days. This is exactly what I did and how I continue to stay cancer-free even all this time later. Click the link here and let's get started. I'll see you in the next video.